Hello again, everyone. Hope we're having a good conference so far. I feel like listening to all these panels so far, there's a theme emerging, and that is that when it comes to tech, Africa has a massive opportunity on its hands. We were talking about this with Patrick Dlamini yesterday. You have the fastest growing, youngest population on the planet, and that is powering the AI boom. You've got rare earths, and that is powering the AI boom. So my question to this panel of experts that we've assembled for you is how Africa can seize that opportunity and keep the value here on the continent. So I'm going to start with you, Hassanein, because you've been in the business of power generation since before AI was cool. What's really holding Africa back from capitalizing on AI right now?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. Lizzy, I think that for AI, we shouldn't do a copy and paste like we're seeing everywhere in the world. I think we should have our own use case in Africa, having small AI use case. For example, we should have use case for health. When somebody has, in a remote place, a disease, we can diagnose him with a picture. For example, for school children, we could have the chatbot for them to have quick learning, those kind of small AI use case. So what is holding us back today? Mainly, first point is regulation. In Africa, we have to have an AI made by Africans and for Africans, which is not the case for the moment because all the countries are not applying proper data sovereignty regulation. So that's a main point. The second point is that we have a big scarcity in energy. Our penetration in electricity in majority of the countries is less than 50%. We have to increase that absolutely. That's a major problem. The third one is the skills. We have to accelerate in skilling. We have to open coding school, AI school all over in Africa. This will help our youth. It will help the industry to grow in AI. We have to do it for the Africans and by the Africans.
So Hatem, you're in a similar sphere. What's your view?
I think I totally agree with Hassanein, and I think if we look at the African continent today, the total data center capacity is less than 500 megawatts. That's less for a continent with 1 billion people than what we have in the UAE today. So a country with 11 million people. This means we're really far behind here on the continent. And I agree totally, energy is an issue. And the problem is not just the scarcity or the price, it's the reliability of energy. And this is a problem. In telecom, we can put, a generator that runs for a few hours until electricity comes again. If you have a few 100 megawatt data center, you cannot do that. The other issue, and I even, double click on it, which is regulation. I think other than data sovereignty, which is a big issue, generally in the continent, with so much opportunity we have, there are always many surprises and regulations, which means regulations changing very fast. The politics are always very fluid. And for something like this data center, which you build and you expect that you recover this investment over a long horizon, it really becomes an issue. So these are things that maybe I think that we have to get through to be able to get the right level of investment.
Well, Genevieve, you can bring us the investor perspective here. I know you're not a traditional tech investor. You invest in businesses across the economy that all use tech. What's holding us back here? And if it isn't Africa that's winning the AI race in Africa right now, who is? Is it the US or is it China?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Lizzy. Look, I completely agree with Hassanein and Hatem, but I'd say while that's an interesting question about who's winning the AI race, I think, I would say it doesn't really matter if it's the US or China. I think the question that, Africans need to ask is how does Africa win? And, probably even more importantly is how do we make sure Africa doesn't lose, right? I think some of this has been alluded to, but I think Africa has, naturally the things that are critical for AI development, i.e. critical minerals. 30 to 40% of the world's critical minerals are here, as well as a really large youthful population that hopefully will drive the adoption of AI into the future. And so I think the challenge to all of us is how do we avoid what has plagued us for so many years, which is that we export raw materials and then we import, in this case, technology, right? So I think that just doesn't work. And I don't want to repeat everything that Hassanein has said, but I think he's just absolutely hit on what's holding us back, which is we need local processing capabilities. We need to develop, human capital here. Energy security, I think, is absolutely critical. And I think then the right regulatory environment. And I think one other thing is we just need to have more integrated markets. We're just so fragmented, right? That how do you create a large enough marketplace if we don't operate either in sub-regional blocks or think, collectively as a continent?
Well, some of that tech that is imported here is yours, Alex.
Yes, absolutely. I think everyone's been focused on what's holding us back. I think we should be focused on what we need to be doing and what companies are doing, because I think the Africa story is always about what's holding us back, what are we not doing? But I think we should be talking about things that are happening, right? And things that should get us excited. I truly believe that AI can add tremendous value to our continent over time. Depending on whose research you look at, it can add $1.2 trillion to our economies in the next 3 years. So I think that now the question is, what should we be doing? What are companies doing? I mean, I can tell you what we're doing that excites us, and I'm sure there's other things that other people are doing. For us, it's about how do you create the bandwidth to actually have people come online, right? Which has been a challenge. So for us to really leverage this AI momentum that we have and ensure that it doesn't become, the digital divide doesn't become the AI divide, we need to make sure that people can come online. Hence the reason why we're basically investing in infrastructure. The undersea cables we're investing in will ultimately, over time, as we work with last mile operators, bring down the cost of data. The reason why I have nephews and nieces that ask me for money every day for data is because the data costs are high, right? But if data cost goes lower, that means they're going to be online and really leverage the tools that they need to leverage to be able to learn better, work better, and be able to earn over time, right? So I think that's one of the things that's Google that we're doing. The other thing that's important is how do we ensure that we educate and scale up this vast youth population that we have? And again, that's an area of opportunity, and it's about taking action versus not talking about what we don't have. At Google, we've trained about 7 million people over the last few years. We plan on training 3 million more people over the next 3 years. And all of that is going to be on deeper digital skills, right? So not just skills that they need to have, but skills that they need to have to really be able to leverage AI. Mm-hmm. The other thing that excites me about the work that we do is that we have AI research centers on the ground now. We have one in Accra, we have one in Kenya, and the work that we're doing, partnering with other startups, is going to be fundamental in solving for the challenges that we have, whether it's health, whether it's medicine, as you mentioned, whether it's agriculture. Yeah. Those are some of the pieces that I think are really critical for us to talk about, the exciting pieces about AI versus what we don't have. Investing in cloud is, of course, expensive. We just invested in one that we launched earlier this year in South Africa as Google, a cloud region. But it's, again, I guess I'm trying to frame it in terms of, yes, there are challenges, but the key is to make sure that we're taking progressive action and also to recognize the success being had. So you see the opportunity here. Absolutely huge. But so do others. You've got some big rivals. I'm not going to name them. But are you going to try and compete on price, or are you going to tailor your offering to the African market? We've always tailored our offering to the African market. Hence, we have a team on the ground. I talked about our researchers. We have a product development center where we have engineers, African engineers, collecting data to make sure that our language models are able to also have insights and feedback that enables people to be able to thrive. We have to be able to compete on value. I think competition is critical. It's essential. We want more players on the ground. Google cannot be the only ones playing. We want global players. We want startup players on the ground. And I think that's why we're going to be able to really be able to harness and take advantage of this AI opportunity. Now, we've had some breaking news this afternoon. X and ChatGPT have had to block users' access because of an outage at Cloudflare. Cloudflare says that it potentially impacts multiple customers worldwide, although they have managed to recover some of their services. We have seen a knock to the shares in the pre-market, but I do want to ask if any of you have been affected. We had seen it on our networks in Africa and overall,
But luckily this time it was about 10 minutes before services were restored. So it wasn't as bad as other global outages that we've seen recently.
Okay, anyone else?
No, not far as I know.
Google?
No, I mean, it's 10 minutes ago. I haven't seen any impact, and at least that I've been reported to has impacted our services at all.
Okay. Genevieve, do you think that it perhaps shows there's too much trust being put in big tech?
Too much what?
Trust.
Look, I mean, like with, all new innovations, I think it's going to be, learnings along the way. I would say, you mentioned earlier that I'm not a traditional tech investor. So we invest in the real economy, right? We invest in businesses, financial services, logistics, travel and tourism, consumer goods, manufacturing, et cetera. And we think about everything with tech at the center, right? When you think about what does it take to create sustainable and profitable investments, you need growth, right? You need efficiencies, you need productivity, et cetera. And really, tech is the big enabler of that. So we don't think of technology as a sector, like not that we wouldn't invest in tech direct businesses, but we think about it as a horizontal enabler across the board. And I think for us, that's sort of the biggest source of value creation. So in every due diligence we do, there's a tech component to it because, I just think where the world is going and for what Africa needs, because we've got so many headwinds as well, right? We've got currency headwinds, we've got macro headwinds, we've got small fragmented markets, et cetera. And so, one of the earlier questions you asked me is what's going to attract global capital coming in here? And there are two things, right? It's growth, i.e. and returns, and then is that it's a large enough marketplace. So given all the headwinds, you sort of have to almost outpace that. And I think it's only centering technology to make companies better, faster, more sustainable, and more resilient that just helps Africa as a sort of investable asset class win in the long term.
And you've got some heavyweights backing you. You've got the likes of the Nigerian billionaire Aliko Dangote. You've got the Carlyle founders backing you. Genevieve, this is serious money. How big's the fund going to get, and when are you going to close it?
Okay, listen, Lizzy's asking hard questions now. So, look, it's a tough fundraising environment. We're targeting $400 million. We're almost there. Final close is going to be at the end of March. And yeah, we're grateful for all of the names you've listed, but we also have a lot of African institutions that have invested in the fund. And I think that's super, super critical, right? So we talk a lot about foreign capital coming into Africa, but I think the real test will be when we get domestic African capital, African savings, et cetera, investing in our own infrastructure, in our own businesses, in our own technology, and really creating homegrown solutions, right? Like, I'm actually not a very techie person, so I always look to what are we solving for? It can't just be technology for its own sake. The use case has to be able to solve Africa's problems. And so that's why, when we decided to name our fund the Africa Accelerator Fund, because it's really about using all the tools, of which technology is one, to really accelerate the growth that we need for our continent's development.
And Hatem, are you planning to double down on your investment in Africa? Because what about the E in E&? Are you going to focus more here or the Middle East?
So we're operating in 12 countries in Africa, directly and through our majority control of Morocco Telecom. We have put aside about $4.5 billion to invest in 25, 26, and 27 in the infrastructure, more than 1.4 billion in operating that infrastructure as well. So there is a lot of investment coming into this. And this is because at the end of the day, if you cannot connect the people, you cannot do AI, you cannot do fintech, you cannot do all these things. So Africa today is the continent that is catching up. We see some pockets, of course, like in the south of the continent, the north of the continent, a couple of countries on the east where penetration has really gone up, but the rest of the continent still is behind the global standards, behind Asia. So as a continent, when we talk the global south, the one that is really playing catch up is Africa. We are putting money, our colleagues also, Shamil was earlier in from Vodacom, Hassanein, MTN, Orange, Airtel, all of them are working hard to build the infrastructure. The continent is big, and I think there's a lot of debate about how the maps were drawn, that actually Africa is much bigger than it appears in the maps. So it's very challenging to get the coverage.
Yeah.
We have the geography is difficult as well, but we are doing it. Now we have opportunities because of the new low orbit satellites that can also enable connecting the base stations. So there are lots of things that are happening now. And the base really for the advancement is connecting the people. Once you connect the people, you can then enrich their digital life by introducing the other services.
Well, Hassanein, what have you been investing in on the continent recently with AXIAN?
Listen, we're doing those days amazing new ventures. First of all, last of it was Wananchi in East Africa. We just acquired a telco player that is doing last mile FTTH and FTTO in Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Malawi, and Zambia. Also providing TV services. So we just closed it 2 weeks ago. And another venture we just finalized, we become the largest shareholder of the African Amazon called Jumia. So we are very excited about that company because the management team has done a total turnaround and has made a real African solution for trade in Africa. So I think that's a good one.
Well, let me ask you then, do you see more opportunity at the infrastructure end of the value chain or at the use case end if you're putting this money into e-commerce?
As Hatem said, Africa is massive. It's the fastest growing population. It is the fastest growing economies. Out of the 5 fastest growing economies, all the 5 are African. So we've got a tremendous work to do. First mile, middle mile, last mile, infrastructure, data center, fiber, connectivity with submarine cable Google is doing with us, etc. So many things to do. I mean, it's not like pick and choose. Sun is shining for everybody. The most important thing is that everybody should be convinced. Everybody should come to Africa.
Yes.
We have a tendency to do one thing. We say that, but there are those problems and that we have those problems. Yes, but wherever in the world you don't have problem. This is an open highway, and it is an opportunity for all Africans to do all those investments in our great continent.
So,
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Now that the sun is shining in Joburg,
Yes.
Alex, tell me, how do you pick which startups you work with?
Look, we have our Google for Startup Accelerator program that we invite all startups to apply because we provide them with funding, we provide them with training, we provide them with mentorship to enable them to thrive. But also one of the things that we always look at is how sustainable are they over time and what are they looking to solve for. As Genevieve mentioned, there's a lot of challenges on the continent that, again, I get excited about the solutions for, that we're not finding solutions for. An example of that is Jacaranda Health in Kenya. 700 women die every single day on this continent still from maternal-related deaths, which is ridiculous because in a lot of ways that could be mitigated by just understanding where a woman is in the process. We're working with Jacaranda Health. They have a point-of-care, very cost-effective, handheld ultrasound machinery that can be able to predict and understand how the woman is doing so that they can then be able to manage that process. So those are some of the things that excite us, especially with the startups, because they are really going after gaps in the space that are going to be able to improve the societal health of Africa and being able to make sure that the foundational issues we have are being solved for. So that's kind of what we look for. We look for those sort of startups to be able to support. Genevieve, you want to say anything about startups?
Not about startups, that's for you. So I do sort of businesses that are already established but that need capital to get to the next level of growth. And just one example of one such business is we own a tech logistics business called Corridor. When we acquired this business in 2019, what it did was provide fuel and cash services to thousands of trucks that are crossing borders in 13 countries across Africa. So it was not a tech company by any stretch of the imagination, and it actually was a pretty traditional sort of freight servicing like the freight and trucking sector. But what we saw was that there were so many inefficiencies and bottlenecks. Just think about crossing the border between South Africa and Zimbabwe. You've got all the heavy paperwork with customs. You've got all the cash leakages associated with that. You've got, did you put the right amount of fuel in? Is there leakages, et cetera, et cetera. So that just made this so unproductive, right? And one of the things that we need on the continent is just free movement of goods, services, services, and people. And so we saw this as a real opportunity where we could digitize a business like this, where it's not the trucks. They're not the guys with the trucks. They're the guys that could say, okay, how do we make it better for the truck owners, more seamless, more efficient? Think about how many more trucks could go through, how much cheaper it could be, because this is also like a cost. This is not a nice to have. And so what we've managed to create by investing heavily in the tech platform, by thinking that we can actually create a logistics platform, because if you just think about it, the analog version of this can only serve so many trucks, right? But when you have a real technology fuel platform, then you can just grow that much more. And so what we've done is now we've built this platform. It's one electronic payment that the truck owner just needs to do that once, and that takes care of everything: insurance, parking, sort of weighing, custom payments, all the processing. Minimizes corruption, reduces cost.
What doesn't it do?
Exactly. So that's just kind of, for me, that's why the use case is so important. Not apps for its own sake, but that solve African problems with African sort of technological innovations.
And you layer AI on top of that, right? With all the data that you're collecting.
There you go. Exactly.
All of a sudden it becomes more efficient. So while that company exists, there's a company like Alterra that we've invested in Kenya. They provide truck owners with understanding of what routes to take. How do they optimize for, again, what you mentioned?
Yep.
Again, that's the excitement of how AI, the data that you collect, and how you use the tools to actually make our businesses more efficient.
And I feel like what we can take from this is actually there's a huge opportunity to leapfrog by using all of this tech. So before we go, I just want to have a lightning round of all of you. What does success for African tech look like in a decade? We'll start with you, Hatem.
I think would be a totally connected continent where everyone is connected, everyone is using fintech applications. Nobody's unbanked anymore, because if you don't have a banking account, you will have a mobile money account like M-Pesa and all these other services that are doing the same. We'll be able to use AI to further the advancement in the continent, as opposed to today, a lot of places in let's say in the north, that if we call this the global south, are worried because AI is going to replace jobs. We have an opportunity that AI here is going to help create jobs and advance the economy rather than replace jobs, because the percentage of people doing knowledge jobs that will be replaced is much, much smaller. So it's a great opportunity. For us, the benefit of these coming technologies are much bigger than the adverse effects that they will see in other geographies.
Mm-hmm. Hassanein, success
Lizzy,
in 10 years.
For me, success in 10 years in Africa with AI is when children won't be left alone in school, when mother and children will not be left alone in public system, in hospital. Success will be when children will have opportunity coming in the job market with proper job opportunity. Success will be when we will be able to close all the gaps we have today in Africa, and we'll be able to leapfrog, as we did with telco 25 years ago. We have to do it the same way with AI. Success when we'll have efficient administration with proper regulation. And success and big opportunity for Africa is that we are the only one continent that will be able to provide clean, with renewable energy, AI, because we can have decarbonated data center. So we can in Africa, Africa must, and Africa will.
Alex.
That the leapfrog is very much realized, that we solve for some of the societal challenges leveraging AI. The startups that we have, the companies we have, really embrace AI so that the digital divide doesn't become the AI divide, because again, it will have exponential negative impact if we don't embrace it and leverage it now. That these startups and these companies that we have are able to build solutions using African data that enable them to be global companies. They also offer solutions, AI solutions to the rest of the world. That's what excites me, because I truly believe that we have the capacity to do so, and I'm really excited about what AI can add to our continent. So for me, that's what I pray for.
Genevieve, you get the last word.
Everything they said.
Thank you.
That's
all.
the advantage to be the last.
So good to have you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.